Hi, I'm Paul Manning, the Baptist World Aid Church Relationship Manager for Victoria and Tasmania. It's great to be able to join you today, even though it's online, and hopefully next time it will be live. I'd like to thank Pastor Nathan for the opportunity to join you today. And I'd like to thank you, Camberwell Baptist Church, for your ongoing partnership with and support of Baptist World Aid Australia in God's work of grace and love and compassion, especially amongst the vulnerable and marginalised in Nepal. Because you've responded to God's call to care for others in this broken world, and despite the global impact of COVID-19, God has used your faithful support to ensure that essential programs have continued in Nepal. I'd like to start by sharing how your generosity has changed lives. Sima is a 12-year-old girl living with a family of 9 in Nepal, within a remote and hilly village surrounded by jungle. Their house is made of mud and stone, wood and tin. At best, they can only grow enough food for 5 or 6 months. And the markets are a treacherous 4-hour walk either way. Malnutrition is often a reality, and education is financially out of reach, and the social cultural practices of child labour and child marriage remain real threats. That all changed when Sima, her family and village were impacted by the Ministry of Baptist World Aid Australia. Sima's mother was trained in raising goats and vegetable farming, which meant more food, more income, and being able to finance education. Sima can go to school where she's learning new skills and knowledge. She has a new hope of becoming a nurse in the future, to be part of providing a health service within her village. And their whole village has been empowered to address the social, cultural threats of child labour and child marriage. There's also Kasila. He's 37 years old and also lives in a very remote area of Nepal with his family. Most people living in his community are poor and vulnerable to disaster. Before COVID-19, his family's primary income source was through daily labour work. But after the 2020 national lockdown, that primary income source was cut off. They could not go out, which meant they could not work. Kasila's family had very little savings. But with what they had, they were able to manage to feed everyone for 2 weeks. Kasila says, "Initially, I thought that the lockdown would be short-lived, but as it continued on extending, it became more and more difficult to feed my family." Kasila and his family were not alone. There were more than 300 families in their area who were struggling in the same situation. Fortunately, they received emergency food rations to help feed their families. Kasila says, "I am thankful for your support and Baptist World Aid's Christian partners for the timely supply of the food packages." Now, listening to Sima and particularly Kasila's story, it tells us that we're not alone in our experiences of the pandemic. We've done it tough here in Victoria, particularly in Melbourne through 2020 and now 2021. But there are people worse off, particularly those who are already experiencing the challenge of living in poverty. I've been thinking about a quote which recently popped up on my Facebook feed. "It shouldn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you." There's truth in this statement, isn't there? We're often more concerned with what's happened or happening to us. Look at the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been experienced worldwide and therefore has captured the world's attention. While poverty remains, for most in the West anyway, something we read about or see on a screen. It's not something we experience. It's not something that has happened to us. But is poverty something that should matter to us? As followers of Jesus, does poverty matter? Poverty matters because God instructed his people in Micah 6:8 to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with him. In Isaiah 1:17 and Jeremiah 22:3, we learn that as God's people, we are to seek the welfare of those who are unable to fend for themselves, to show concern and care to the poor, widows, orphans, and foreigners. We're to defend and seek the welfare of those who are the most vulnerable to suffer from injustice. And then, in Proverbs 21:3 and Amos 5:21 to 24, we discover justice, doing what is right and just, is identified as a most acceptable act of worship. Poverty should matter to you and I because poverty matters to God. Another reason poverty should matter to us is because Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it in the full. We read in John 10:10. Jesus makes clear he came to make it possible for each person to experience life in its fullness. However, poverty limits a person's experience to live life in its fullness. Poverty frustrates a person's ability to fulfill their God-given call, to flourish as well as steward creation. Poverty obscures a person's intrinsic worth and dignity that is theirs by virtue of being made in the image of God. During an encounter with a lawyer, Jesus makes it clear the priority for his followers. They are to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. We read this in Luke 10:28. Then, through the parable of the Good Samaritan, which follows in Luke 10, we're given further insight into why poverty should matter to us. As Jesus makes clear that his followers need to see injustice, need to act in response to injustice, and need to treat all people equally, there's no exceptions. We're told in this parable that a man was travelling on his own, minding his own business when he's attacked, stripped naked, and left to die. Now, clearly this man was a victim of injustice, in that his basic rights were violated via the unprovoked, violent attack by others. The attack was unfair and undeserved, and through no fault of his own, he was beaten, naked, half dead. The man was disempowered, degraded, humiliated, pushed aside, and left to die. And to add salt to the wound, two men, a priest and a Levite, two men who should have known better, who should have done better, walk past him. Their actions only reinforcing, almost validating the injustice already experienced by this man. Now, unable to help himself, the man became trapped within the circumstances in which he had been pushed. The man needed someone else to see the injustice and its impact on him. Now, Sima and Kisula needed the same, didn't they? They were unable to help themselves, their families, and their community. They needed others to see the injustice of poverty and its impact, and praise God, through Baptist World Aid and their partners, others did. Jesus makes it clear that we need to see injustice as well as do something about it. We need to act. We need to act. We need to be practical in our response. We need to respond to the immediate needs of those needing help, as well as provide support which helps them move forward into the life that Jesus planned, living life to the full. The beaten up man continued to experience injustice because two men, the priest and the Levite, both were top roles within Jewish culture and society. They did nothing. They left the man lying there, watching the sandals of others walk by, unseen, until out of nowhere someone stops. They see the injustice. They walk over into his life and literally saves it. A good Samaritan intervened. He did something. He stopped. He acted. He gave the man a helping hand up and out of the unfair and undeserved circumstances. As followers of Jesus, we need to be people willing to see, willing to act. Now, that's an easy thing to say, isn't it? We can all easily agree as we all keep walking. We'll listen to Simma's story and Casilla's story. We might even pause to do so. But as we listen, we're distracted by our own life circumstances. We don't really see, and in the end, we walk. We don't really act. As followers of Jesus, we need to rise to the challenge. We need to be willing to see, willing to act. That is, we need to be people loving God and loving our neighbour as ourselves. Remember, Jesus told this story in answer to a man's question, "Who is my neighbour?" In the end, Jesus' answer is simple. Everyone. Everyone is your neighbour, there's no exceptions. By making the Samaritan the hero, Jesus makes the point we're to treat all people equally. There's no exceptions on who we're to act justly towards, to show mercy, to love and give hope. Even our enemies are included in the all. Something you may already know, there was a long-held animosity, almost hatred, between most Jews and most Samaritans. Both despise the other. Jesus makes clear that we need to treat all people equally. There's no exception. Our neighbour is not only the people we like, our family, our church community. They're not only the people that live next door to us or up the street or live in our suburb or our city or our country. Our neighbour includes people we like and don't like, who like us and don't like us. It includes people who are local as well as people who are global. This means that we need to think beyond our borders. We do need to think global. We do need to show love and give hope to people whom we probably will never meet. Through the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus makes clear we need to see, to act, to treat all people equally. There's no exceptions. This means the injustice of poverty should matter to us. As we see poverty, we need to act. We need to help those experiencing the injustice of poverty, no matter who they are or where they live. Now, over the past 18 months, we've seen worrying signs. An estimated 150 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty due to COVID-19. 3 billion people do not have reliable access to a water supply. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has triggered a new round of food shortages, famine and starvation. According to the World Food Programme, 690 million people don't have enough food to eat, while 130 million people risk being pushed to the brink of starvation. Now is an important and significant time to become involved in responding to the injustice of poverty. And Baptist World Aid Australia is all about helping you to show compassion, to be the love that will help end poverty in our broken world, to give those trapped in unjust circumstances freedom and hope. A most significant way to respond to the injustice of poverty is through sponsoring a child. As we heard from Simma's story, sponsoring a child through Baptist World Aid not only changes the child's life, it changes their family's life. It changes their community and village. The child's whole community is enabled and empowered to move out of poverty and stay out of poverty. As a community, they experience love and are moved forward into the life that Jesus planned, living life to the full. You can sponsor a child today by going to the website now on your screen. There, you can connect with a child from Nepal. Nepal is Camberwell Baptist's country of focus, and you can begin a partnership with a child, their family, and their community. You can also contribute to Camberwell Baptist Church partnership with Baptist World Aid in its ongoing support of Nepali children by going to the website which is now on your screen. Jesus ends the parable with the instruction to go and do likewise. So we're left with this challenge to do just that, to see, to act, to treat all people equally. And in partnership with Baptist World Aid, you can. You can be part of the response to the injustice of poverty, to making it possible for each person to live life in its fullness as God intended, to make a better world for all.